My first shop was the back of a rented one-car garage. My second was actually two shops. I kept wood tools in the basement and metal tools in the garage. For my third shop, I really wanted one dedicated space in a shed. And my wife and I always wanted to move out to the country eventually anyway. So we started looking for a new place. We didn't want another project house, and the same went for the shed too.
You can rent this out and pay your taxes.
Ideally, I could just move in there and get right to work on projects. But everything seemed to need a ton of work to get it in usable shape. Then we found this place, and it was beautiful.
Should we go look at that shed? Or, I mean, I don't know if you're interested in that at all.
I don't know. I think we just skip that.
Yeah, I think we've seen everything we need to see.
Yeah.
But we can check out the vineyard.
Yeah, I think the vineyard's way more.
Oh, okay.
The shed wasn't perfect.
Oh,
Just a moth.
it's not bad.
I can relate to this electrical work.
But there's at least power out here.
Yeah.
You got some bees too.
Nice.
But with a little TLC, it wouldn't be long before I'd be up to speed again, I figured. I was really wrong, as I often am on this channel, but that makes for a better video. So we bought the place and we moved in. First up was to fix the grade board. This is the board that goes around the bottom edge of the building at ground level. I had missed it during inspection, but these boards were rotten and falling apart along most of the shed. So I dug away the dirt and gravel. Some sort of a tunnel thing here. Hopefully whatever was in there is long dead. And I pried them out. And then my in-laws came over. You might remember Neil from the push lawnmower rebuild project. Well, spoiler alert, I'd still be working on this shed if it wasn't for Neil. And actually Karen too. They were out there several times chipping away at things while I was stuck inside working. So everybody can thank them for me eventually having time to publish videos again. Anyway, Neil brought his super solid Bobcat, which made for a great workbench to route new edges on the boards.
Okay, one more.
We reinstalled those boards. And Neil separately tracked down something called a base trim to add along the bottom of the siding. This collects all the water running down the side of the building and drops it off before it can hit that wood down below. And all that went well and was well worth doing right away. The new boards are still looking perfect a year later. Next, Neil and I moved on to the door. The bottom of the current door and sill was also rotten, so it needed to be replaced. Meanwhile, the post holding it up also was shaky, to say the least. So at the bottom, it was only attached to the grade board versus a solid foundation. So we took the opportunity here to both move that post over for a bigger doorway and dig out a hole to sink the column into the ground to more solidly mount the door. We used hydro excavation for this. That's a fancy way of saying we broke up the dirt with a pressure washer, then sucked up the dirt and water with a shop vac. This was a mess, but it did work well. Then we dropped some flat concrete blocks in the bottom, stood up a couple 2x6s, and surrounded them with gravel in the hole. With that major milestone complete, it was time for concrete. For someone else to do the concrete, that is. And to pay them to put in an actual driveway up to the shed while they were at it. Inside the shed, first they dug out the old floor, and they put in a bunch of gravel and 2 floor drains. They really did a lot of work in here. If you remember, this dirt level used to be up by where that ground spike is. Looks like they found me some old plow part. Awesome. Hey fella, they're gonna be putting concrete in here. You gotta get out. The next day they put down plastic sheet and foam to seal the floor against moisture coming up from below. Then it was finally time for concrete, and this crew proved to be well worth the cost. They blew me away with how hard they worked and how professional their results were. There was no way I could ever compete with what they did in the time they did it, so I was very happy I hired it out. few days later, the concrete had dried enough to work on. That gave us an actual target to shoot for on the bottom of the door, so we finished that install.
If we take the metal over as far as the stunt drive.
Yeah. Hey!
See, I like this much better.
This definitely was a finicky process, but it ultimately wasn't too hard, and it's great having a super solid door to walk through. With the door done, it was time for insulation, or at least all the prep that was needed for insulation, specifically spray foam insulation. The first part being, we needed to remove these skylights. They were awesome and let in a ton of light, but they were brittle fiberglass and they were already leaking. Plus they were going to get covered by the spray foam anyway, so they had to go. For the record, this nail puller tool was a lifesaver. I stole some sheet metal off the back door to replace those roof panels. More on this later. We used the old panels as patterns to cut replacements. And we screwed everything back in place with rubber washer head sheet metal screws. Then lucky for me, there was a good rain after, which exposed some leaks. So right here, and go straight up the wall, right there. So I fixed those. It's always a danger working on a roof, so the panel replacement was another project I was tempted to skip. But in retrospect, I'm definitely glad we just got it done with. It was easier than I thought, and it's nice not to have to worry about those fragile fiberglass panels disintegrating up there. Next, it was time to clean off the walls. The guy I hired for the spray foam said the walls didn't have to be scrubbed or anything unless there was diesel exhaust or soot. My walls didn't have that, lucky for me, but I would want to remove all the cobwebs, hornet nests, and such. So Neil and I got out the leaf blowers and got to work. With the walls clean, it was time for the spray foam. And this was another one where I was glad that I hired it out, because these guys did great work, and they did it while wearing plastic suits in extreme heat up in even the hotter space of an attic. I'm sure this guy was swimming in that suit. I picked spray foam to insulate because it did three things. One, it sealed up the building. A new shed might be wrapped in Tyvek to seal it up against wind, but it was too late for that here without pulling off all of the siding. Two, it insulated the heck out of the place. I went with 2 inches of closed cell on the walls and 3 inches on the ceiling. And 3, it saved me time. If I had to insulate the whole place myself, it probably still would be sitting there bare metal a year later. Next up was figuring out, what do I do to cover up this foam? I thought about drywall, but that would have been a lot of money and work. So instead, I opted to embrace the spray foam and just paint it. The stuff actually looks pretty good when it's first installed, but it eventually turns extremely yellow. And aside from that, it's also relatively flammable. So I picked up some anti-fire mixture and added it to paint from Home Depot. The first half of the painting took me about a day with a Wagner power painter. I had to stop every 10 feet or so to refill the on-gun paint, and my arm was about to fall off at the end of the day. So I picked up a Graco airless sprayer for the rest. And wow, that sprayer wasn't cheap, but it was a dream in comparison. It was so light and it just blasted paint. I finished the second half of the shed in probably an hour or two. Yeah, I had to spend time cleaning it up after, but so be it. Same for the painting the spray foam itself. I like that it keeps the post visible while being fairly lightweight for labor. With that being done, next up was dealing with those sliding shed doors. They were cool, but they just let wind sail through the place. So I ordered some garage doors in September. That'd be plenty of time before the snow flies, I thought. Well, no, it wasn't. In fall 2021, all insulated garage doors were back ordered for months thanks to Hurricane Sam. Oh well. Anyway, while I waited for the doors, I still needed to heat and cool the place, so I bought a 24K Mr. Cool DIY mini split. The install wasn't bad. If I could go back in time, I probably would have forked over the extra money for the 36K unit just to add a little more capacity in case I want to add on to the shed. But for now, it's working great. And I installed lights. Inside, I picked these 4-foot 5,000 lumen brightness, 5,000K color temperature tube style lights. These are great. I really like a bright shop, and 8 of these 10 feet off the floor is more than enough to do that. Outside, I went with more 5,000K lights. These work well, but bugs really seem to love this 5,000K color. You can't enter in the summer without taking a pile of bugs with you. I plan to replace these eventually with something more yellow to see if that helps. Finally, 4 months later, the garage doors showed up. Neil helped me pick them up and install the first door. It went well enough that I was able to take care of the second one by myself. I will say, installing the garage doors wasn't as hard as I imagined it would be, and I probably cut my cost in half by doing it myself, but despite being extra super on guard, I still almost hurt myself pretty bad. I'll do a follow-up video on that, but if you're considering installing garage doors yourself, know that you need to stay vigilant throughout the entire process, not just when you're winding the springs. This really isn't a bad one to hire someone else if you can. Good luck either way. Anyway, with that, the last of the critical stuff was complete. Now it was just the endless list of major stuff, like more outlets so I didn't have to trip over extension cords anymore, and wired internet so I could look up how-to videos when I inevitably get stuck on things, and more storage so I can actually use my tools and workbenches again without everything being covered in junk. These are the best and fastest to install wall mount shelves, by the way. So that's pretty much everything I've done so far. And while it was way more work than I expected, it sure is nice having everything in one place instead of having the 2 workshops at my old house. But if you're feeling at all envious of this, or if you're like, dang it, I'm never going to get anything done until I get a shed, check out ClickSpring's workshop. That guy works in a glorified closet, and he's recreating the Antikythera mechanism. It's wild. So no, none of this is needed, but it is super cool to have gotten this far, and I'm looking forward to lots of years in here. On to the next one. Thanks for watching.